chair. It's not.
Hello? Hello, can you hear us?
Hi, Rosalie.
Hi, yes, I can. I don't know if
Awesome.
I don't know if Christina's on yet. I know
Let me
there's somebody
see.
else there.
Okay, let me close this.
I'm trying to lock this stupid chair when it
Okay, I
won't.
know, right? Okay. And
Full
then let me
screen.
just, make this big.
Hello. I can see you.
Hi.
Do we look good?
Oh, you look wonderful. There's Christina.
Thank you.
Hi, Christina.
I think she's
Your mic is
muted.
not on.
Oh, hello.
Hey, there she is.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, so great to see you guys. So I just wanted to make sure that the Zoom
Hi.
link connected fine.
It
Can you
looks
hear
to
me
be
okay?
working from our end.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Perfect. So members usually start connecting between 10 and 10:05. So,
Okay, that sounds
Okay.
fine.
Awesome.
and of course, Sigding, if you can, introduce, what you guys do, what you guys offer, and then we'll proceed with the class. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Sounds like a
See you
plan.
then in
Good.
7 minutes. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you then.
Do
Rosalie,
you
any
have
questions?
me? Do you have me as one of the hosts so that I could share my screen?
Yes. You can share
Okay,
your screen with no problem.
okay, wonderful.
All right, my
Okay.
dear. See you soon. Okay, bye.
If you want to, you can mute it there.
Here we go. Good morning, members. So glad to see you today. Another Wednesday in the club's classroom. And today it's a topic that I am very, very interested in, fascinating, because I do work with international investors. That's the majority of my clientele. And FIRPTA is a topic that needs to be taken care in consideration, and also for us to be very aware of how it applies, what it entails, what it is. Sometimes we might confuse our clients when we don't know really what it is. So I am so happy to have today FIRPTA Solutions. I know Sigden for a long time. She contacted me. I'm so happy that she's here with us today. And of course, so she can introduce what FIRPTA Solutions does and introduce Rosalie Sinclair, which is going to be our speaker today. We do have from FIRPTA Solutions a Spanish-speaking personnel as well, which is great for all of you who would like to ask questions in Spanish. Feel free to do so at the end of the presentation. But we want to honor Rosalie's time and FIRPTA Solutions time. So I don't know which one of you is going to do the introduction, Sigden or not, but take it on. And we're so happy to see you today and to have you at the club. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Christina. Very nice seeing you. I am with FIRPTA Solutions now for a few months, and I love this company, and that's why, I wanted to make sure that I reach out to you and introduce you to my team. As you said, FIRPTA plays a major role, especially with, if you do business with foreign internationals, for people. So I have here Diana, who's also an account manager here, as I am as well. So we're doing the processing, and Rosalie Sinclair is our education director, and she's going to be presenting FIRPTA, and we are here to assist her today in answering all the questions you guys have.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. Well, we at FIRPTA Solutions, without being prejudiced, feel that we are the experts in the area on FIRPTA, because FIRPTA is all that we do. And we discovered that a lot of people had a lack of understanding concerning FIRPTA, people who had a vested interest in real estate. So we decided to develop our own education courses to inform realtors and title companies and real estate attorneys and anybody involved in real estate about this important process, so that they wouldn't get stuck with all kinds of penalties and problems for not only them, but their clients as well. So that's kind of why we're doing what we're doing. And let me get my screen up here. And then I'll share a little bit more. Okay, can you see that? You can? Okay. There we go. Are we okay there too? Okay, very good. All right. One of the first things I like to do is kind of take the temperature of the room, and I know I can't see all of you, but even if I can just see a few of you, the rest of you can just do this in your head. What do you feel your expertise is with FIRPTA? Like, have you never heard of it, like thumbs down, or maybe heard of it a little bit, but are unsure or not very confident in your knowledge? One person said to me, I know enough to be dangerous, which, or do you think you're an expert in FIRPTA and you can take over for me here and give this talk? So where about do you stand? Uh-huh, uh-huh. And that's about what I get. I always get either middle or toward the bottom. So one of my goals for today is for you to get that thumb and kind of move it up to the top mark so that at least you'll feel comfortable about understanding what FIRPTA is about, or at least know where to go if you come up with a situation where you need FIRPTA. The second goal that I have, excuse me, is to tell you about our company, FIRPTA Solutions. Our company does just FIRPTA, and I just feel so strongly that we have the information, and passionately that we have the information that can really help you to build your business, because this part of the market, the foreign part of the market, can be a very lucrative part. There are a lot of cash transactions that go about. So this is why it's easy for me to do this, because I just feel strongly that it's helping people. So I'd like to start out with a story that'll kind of give you an idea of how FIRPTA came about. There was a couple called the Van Kirks, and they were from the Netherlands, and they had a piece of property in Florida. And after a while, they missed their family, and they decided that they were going to move back to the Netherlands. So they sold their U.S. property. And because of the market at the time, they made a pretty substantial profit. And when you make a profit in the U.S., you know what happens. You pay taxes on it. Well, when it came time for the Van Kirks to file their taxes, they were back in the Netherlands. And they had no plan on coming back, and they certainly had no plan of filing their taxes. So what's the poor IRS to do? Well, what they did was came up with FIRPTA, and the Van Kirks weren't malicious in their intent not to file taxes. They just went back to their country. But nonetheless, the government still didn't get their taxes from it. And some people are trying to evade taxes. So once again, the IRS has developed FIRPTA to make sure that that doesn't happen. So in a nutshell, FIRPTA is withholding tax that ensures that the U.S. federal government, or the IRS, will get paid the taxes due for real estate sold by a foreign seller. And that's the person that we need to look at, the seller, initially. FIRPTA is an acronym for Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act and it started in 1980. And once again, it's designed to ensure that foreign owners, like the Van Kirks, of U.S. property, and they had property in Florida, pay their share of taxes on the profits or gains when they sell. So FIRPTA kind of closes a loophole. And the way it does is this way. Initially, the money is not paid on the profit, but rather it's estimated and based on the selling price of the house. And then later on, and the money is withheld safely in the hands of the IRS. And later on, when the individual files their taxes, then we figure out exactly what the tax is, and it's based on the profit, and hopefully they'll get some of that back. So once again, it's a withholding tax. It's estimated initially, it's temporary, and it's set aside for future payment, and possibly it's refundable. Because normally FIRPTA is 15% of the selling price, which is a big chunk of change. And that's why it makes it worth their while to file taxes in order to get some of that back. Who's affected by FIRPTA? Well, first of all, foreign sellers. And the IRS defines them as individuals deciding to sell their U.S. property, but are not U.S. citizens or residents. And that's the group that we need to look at. Collecting this upfront payment based on the selling price is the only way the IRS can ensure that they file their tax return to report the sale of the property. And if they don't file their taxes, well, guess what? The IRS already has a nice sum of money, and probably more than the actual amount that they need. So it really benefits if they don't file. It doesn't benefit the seller, of course. Foreign sellers are defined as individuals, corporations formed outside the U.S., some LLCs, and some trusts. And I'm not going into all the definitions of these, or we would be here for a week. But if you have a question as to whether your foreign seller fits into one of these categories or how it works, I have our phone number on each of these pages. Just call, because the initial consultation is free. Like, does this person qualify for FIRPTA? And we'll be able to help you with that. And then if you need documentation, of course, we charge for those things, but we can tell you what you need and what your client needs, and if they fit into FIRPTA as well. Who else is affected by FIRPTA? Buyers. Now, buyers are individuals purchasing property from a non-citizen or non-resident foreigner. It doesn't matter if the buyers are foreign or not. They still have a job to do, but the seller is the one that we look at. If the seller is foreign, then FIRPTA applies. Now let me jump back 1 second. The next sentence I'm going to put up here may sound really confusing, and it is. And this is what makes FIRPTA kind of complicated. The government gave the buyer a job as well. And so hang in there with me whenever I say this, because I'll explain it about 20 times during the course of this presentation. The buyer must hold back up to 15% of the selling price and make a payment to the IRS on the seller's behalf. Now, the buyer is not paying the money. The buyer is sending it in. And that sounds very confusing. And you may wonder, well, why did the government do that? You know, the buyer's not paying it. Why can't the seller just submit it? Well, here's why. The seller may go back to their country, and the buyer may be foreign and go back to their country as well. But remember, they bought a piece of property in the U.S. So if the money is not sent in to the IRS, then the buyer's property can be confiscated. Or if the buyer is in residence here, the IRS can go back to the buyer who is here in the U.S. in order to get the money. So it was pretty clever on their part, but it gets very confusing because, like I said, the buyer is not actually paying the money, but just submitting it. And there's more. Of course, with the government, there always is. FIRPTA applies to foreign entities as well, and I covered a few of those a few minutes ago. There may be possible exceptions or reductions, and we'll look at some of those in a minute. The sellers and or buyers may need to apply for U.S. tax ID. They both need them. Both sellers and buyers need to have U.S. tax IDs, but I put may here because they may already have them. If they do not have them, they need to apply for them because they must have them. And that's one of the things that we can do at FIRPTA Solutions. If your client needs a U.S. tax ID, we can take care of that and send for it for them. Additional documentation may be required and required certification, and I'll show you some of those things as well. And this next one is really important. Funds must be submitted in a timely fashion in order to comply and avoid penalty. And that timely fashion is 20 days after closing. So within 20 days after closing, the buyer takes the seller's money and submits it to the IRS. And once again, we can help you do that as well. FIRPTA can be complex, it is, but FIRPTA Solutions can manage each step of the process. And like I tell everybody, don't hesitate to get involved in a situation that involves FIRPTA. We are there to support you and to help you. And now we're very proud to be a preferred vendor for the club as well. And you can be assured that we are experts in this field. Okay, let's take a look at some possible exemptions or reductions. Excuse me. And once again, usually the amount is 15% of the selling price. But there are some reductions. If the buyer is going to use the property as a residence, not as a rental property, but as their own residence for up to 2 years, and the selling price is $300,000 or less, then the seller is exempt from paying FIRPTA and the buyer is exempt from sending it in. But if the property fits in this category, 300, excuse me, and 1 to under $1 million, then it reduces to 10% of the withholding, or 10% withholding. If it's over $1 million, or if the buyers are not going to be using it as a residence for 2 years, then it's the whole 15%. So this is based on the buyer's intended use of the property. It can't be forced. And somebody asked me one time, well, what does that benefit the buyer? Just, the seller is exempt. Well, the buyer is exempt from having to submit it. So, because there's paperwork that goes along with that. The IRS doesn't require a form to be filled out, but we do suggest that the buyer signs an affidavit for the protection of everybody, just saying that we have intention of residing here for 2 years. And the IRS has this defined. It can be like a winter home or something like that. So there's a certain amount of months that are included in here as well. But if they have every intention of staying there 2 years, and if something comes up, like somebody gets sick or whatever, then that affidavit will show that they did have the intention in the beginning. Okay, so to avoid penalties, and believe me, I'll go over some of them, or even confiscation of property, be sure to remit the correct withholding funds to the IRS within the allotted period of time. And here it is on the closing document. 15% is withheld from the seller. Here's the seller's total amount, but 15% is withheld. And then the buyer or the buyer's agent will submit it to the IRS within 20 days. And you may think, well, the title company will take care of this, and I'm not going to worry about it. Do be concerned about it. It's your client. And so you need to know that this is happening, that this is being taken care of. And of course, at FIRPTA Solutions, we can do all of this for you as well and work with the title company and with the closing and so forth to make sure that all these things are remitted correctly. And like I've been saying, and I'll say over and over again, it can be cumbersome and complicated, but we're a one-stop source for handling this piece of the tax code and ensuring compliance with the government and releasing you from liability. So I'm hoping I'm taking some of your fear away by just knowing that we're here to support you. And I want to go back a little bit here, whoop, 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 to this screen and just tell you a little story. The stories that I tell you are from our company, but this particular one I read about because I wanted to have an example. Sometimes I think examples are easier to understand than me just outlining facts for you. So I read a story about a Canadian person who sold a property for $700,000. And his escrow officer was unsure of how much to withhold, so he withheld the whole 15%. And as you can see, he would have, with 700,000, he would have fit right here. So instead of withholding 70,000, he withheld 105,000. Well, you may think, well, this is no big deal. At tax time, it's based on the profit anyway, so he can get his money back at that point. Well, this particular Canadian gentleman did not want to file taxes. Maybe he didn't want the government to know that he had U.S. property, the Canadian government, or maybe he was getting a divorce, or who knows why, but he wasn't going to file his taxes. So instead of paying 70,000, he paid 105,000. So in the end, he lost $35,000, which is not a good thing for your company, not having this conversation happen. I like to think that it's our gift to you. It's the gift of time, because you didn't get in this business to do taxes, but we did. So if you have any problem or questions, do feel free to call us and we'll support you in any way that we feel that you and your client needs help. Okay, more details, of course. And I see some of you taking notes, and that's fine. You go right ahead. But I have a present for you. At the end of this presentation, you're going to get a free booklet, and it's online, and I'll tell you about it when we get to that point. But it goes over a lot of the material as a review for you of what we're talking about today. So who is considered foreign? Well, we're looking at the seller. The seller of U.S. property is considered foreign if they're a non-resident alien individual, a foreign corporation that has not made an election to be treated domestic, a foreign partnership, a foreign trust, a foreign estate. And if you're not sure if your client fits into these categories, give us a call and we'll tell you. I always get the question about this foreign partnership. What if it's a husband and a wife and one is foreign and one is a citizen? And that is an excellent question. But what happens is FIRPTA still applies because there's a foreign person in the partnership, but it reduces by half. Okay. So, but FIRPTA does not apply to resident aliens, which brings us to the next question. Who is considered a resident alien where FIRPTA does not apply? If they're not a U.S. citizen, they can still be considered a resident alien if they meet one of two tests. And the first test is an easy one. If if they're a lawful permanent resident of the U.S. and they've been given this privilege by the USCIS, the Immigration Services, they're given an alien registration card, which we know as the green card. And if they have a green card, then you don't have to worry, FIRPTA does not apply. The second one is a little bit more complicated, and that's the substantial presence test of them having lived in the U.S. for a certain period of time. And I'll go over it with you. It's a whole IRS algorithm. If they have lived in the U.S., whoops, where's my mouse? There it is. 31 days in the current year, and the current year plus the next 2 years, if they have lived here for 183 days, a total of 183 days, then FIRPTA does not apply because they are considered a resident alien at that point. So I have a little story about this one. Now, this is a whole little IRS algorithm. And if you're unsure, once again, call us and we'll ask you questions like how long this year and so forth. And our processors there sitting at their table can figure it out for you and be able to tell you whether FIRPTA applies to them or not. But I do have a story about this one. And this is an interesting story. Hector is a client of a person from one of our title companies, and her name is Kelsey, and she's from Pittsburgh. And he called Kelsey, and he said he was given 3 different pieces of evidence or of information, and he did not know which applied. So she in turn called us to get the information and make sure that it was straightened out in her mind as well. But here's what Hector was told. He was told by someone that because he's in the process, oh, did I tell you he's from Mexico originally? Okay, he wanted to sell his Texas home, but he's from Mexico originally. So he was told by one person, because he's still in the process of legal residency, they could tax him 30% of the selling price. Tax him, period. And this is absolutely not true. I know when I get 30% off at Kohl's, I'm excited. But to pay 30% of the selling price of a house, that's immense. So, but it was not true. It was not true at all. And then a RE/MAX agent told him, and this is nothing against RE/MAX, because this is complicated. Anybody can make a mistake on any part of it. In fact, when you hear the rest of the story, you'll get it. But anyway, he was told that because he bought the home with his ITIN number, his identification number, that they would take 20%. This was also not true. So then he was told, now listen to this one, by an IRS representative, that because he had the ITIN number, FIRPTA didn't apply at all. And this was untrue too. Now, IRS agents are smart, I'll grant that, but be careful. Some of them are not, their expertise is not in this unique and specialized part of the tax code. It's really a special part. And there are a lot of new IRS agents out there. And this isn't one of the areas that they focus on, because this is just a specialty item with the IRS as well. So here's a little bit more information and you figure it out. Hector's been living in the US for 25 years, since he was 28 years old. And the US has been his residence since then. He's self-employed and he pays taxes, so he's not trying to get out of paying taxes. And yes, he is in the process of legal residency. Well, I usually ask, what do you think? Do you think that he passes this test? And the answer is he passes it with flying colors. I mean, he's lived here unconditionally since he was 28 years old. So what we told Kelsey, and this is one that came into our office, is to have him sign, there's Hector. Have him sign this certification of non-foreign status, or it's an affidavit that says that he is indeed non-foreign for tax purposes. And this is under the penalty of perjury. So once again, it takes it out of your hands. Okay. And we can help you with that as well, to fill that out. And the one that we use in our company has this little small print at the bottom that encourages the buyer to hold on to this certificate for 5 years in order to ensure that if the IRS comes after them, that he did sign it. So this is worth repeating. Now, this is a trick question. Who's responsible for assuring that the IRS receives the withheld funds? What do you think?
The buyer.
Absolutely right. It is the buyer that's responsible. And once again, the buyer's not paying it, but the buyer is submitting it to the IRS. And I'm Italian and I use my hands a lot to show you this means submit. So to avoid penalties or even confiscation of property, be sure to remit the correct withholding funds to the IRS within the allotted period of time after closing. And once again, that's 20 days. And this is the most important piece. This is Form 8288. And within 20 days of closing, this needs to be correctly filled out and sent with the money to the IRS, paid for by the buyer, but sent in. I'm sorry, paid for by the seller, but sent in by the buyer. Okay. And here's a spot here for the tax identification number. So they also need to either have that or be applying for it. But this still needs to be sent in within the 20 days. And if they don't have it at this point, but it's being sent for, then it'll later be attached to it so that the seller can file their tax return. Okay, so where do you go from here? What's your job? Well, determine if FIRPTA applies to the seller. And what we have been saying the last few years is assume that they're foreign and have them verify that they're not foreign. And this could be with a passport, with a birth certificate, with naturalization certificate, a number of different documents, but have them validate that they're not foreign. And if they can't, then FIRPTA applies. Determine and verify if there's an exception. Determine the amount to be paid, up to 15%. Determine the deadlines for submitting the funds, 20 days after closing, and then submit the correctly prepared mandatory 8288 forms with the funds within 20 days. Or refer them to our office. We'll determine what they need and we'll tell you what they need and we'll tell you how to do it. This is our team. And we are definitely defined by expertise. We have some really fantastic processors there, and you're looking at a couple of them here. We have Tatum here with us today, and Diana, and a number of other people. The neat part is many of them do speak foreign languages. We have people that speak Spanish, Portuguese, German, Swiss German, French, Creole, Turkish. And it's really neat because they can consult with your client in their mother tongue. And we even have canine spoken in our company. So one of the people that I'd like to point out is Ricky, and he's our end of the line guy. He's our tax division manager. And I'll tell you about him in a little bit, but he's the one who does the taxes in the end to help your seller get their refund. And I see that there are some questions here, so let's see. A little confused with the second scenario. Was that the one about the Canadian?
About the Mexican, I think it is, Rosalie, that, why is that the one that you're asking? Whoever asked the
Hi,
question?
good
Yes.
morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Gina, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, my question was on the second option where the Mexican lived here for 24 years and filed taxes under a tax ID number. So someone that does not have a US residence or citizenship that files taxes under an IT number, it's exempt from FIRPTA? Or I didn't understand that
Answer
part.
Tatum, do you want to answer that?
Hi, how are you? They will be exempt from FIRPTA only if they pass the substantial presence test. That's why it's important to proceed with that, because then you have proof and there's no liability on the process of the closing of the property. Because the IRS can come back and ask, hey, why you didn't withhold? And you can just say, oh yeah, no, they've been here for 20-something years and they've been filing taxes. And the IRS is gonna be, okay, but how did you check? Did you, so you need documentation to actually back that statement as well.
Okay, and the document, so it will be referring back to the table that says 120 days of the current year, they must be here, and then 1/3 of the prior year and 1/6 of the prior year?
Correct, yes. And we can actually assist with that. We do substantial presence tests. So we only require the information. There's a couple of documents that we need, and we can, take that off your hands and then get it done for you and your clients.
Okay, and I'm a title agent. I'm a title agent for 20 years, and I get this a lot where the buyer, since the buyer is the one taking responsibility, then when we go back to the buyer to explain this type of situation, they get worried. They will be like, well, I don't want to be, reliable for this in the future.
Yes.
So will your company put in writing your review of this and say that this client applies to this exemption because of the substantial presence in the US?
So basically what we do is when we provide the substantial presence test, we also provide a live written verification. So that is what you put with your closing documents.
Including that non-foreign affidavit that the buyer, the seller signs.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Okay, perfect.
It's-
Thank you so much.
It's always good
No
to
problem.
have documents for verification. Okay.
Right, especially because title underwriters, any title underwriter will tell you, well, yes, it sounds okay, but it's still a risk that the buyer is going to take. So as a title company, we will make the buyer sign responsibility of this. We're going to be exempt from anything that happens in the future with not collecting FIRPTA. So this gives me a good tool, to go back to the buyer and say, here's the certification. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
great.
And you can also have them complete a CPA certification, which is just another layer of protection if you need it. And we have certified IRS acceptance agents on staff, so that if you have any documents that you require certification, we can handle that. For example, sending for the ITIN numbers and verifying their identity and so forth. We can coordinate and apply for that ITIN number. We can apply for a reduced withholding amount. We can create all the remittance forms that you need. And we can correspond with the IRS for a quick turnaround, although there is no such thing as quick with the IRS. But I always say quicker because we do know which buttons to press. Because a lot of times if you're dealing with the IRS initially, it's like, oh, I don't even know who I need to talk with.
Right.
but we do, so we can help you with that. This is Ricky. We can prepare and file a U.S. tax return, and he is an expert as far as foreign taxes. So he can help your seller or any foreign person file their U.S. tax returns. We work on resolving old FIRPTA files that won't go away. We don't like these. They're harder than doing it right the first time. But it happens, and it happens sometimes, and it's not even anybody's fault but the IRS's fault. But it still needs to be managed, as you'll see when I tell a story in a little bit. And as I mentioned before, we do have multilingual staff members available. We have 2 sitting right there, as a matter of fact. So this is our real story. This is the part that I like the best. These are some of our clients, and I have each of them here for a reason, to point out something. This is Anna, and Anna has purchased a property in actually North Pole, Alaska. And she purchased this property from an Australian. And this always amazes me that they're in 2 different parts of the world. So she bought a property from Australians, and because they were Australians, sellers, they were subject to FIRPTA. So her title company just turned it all over to us. And the reason I have Anna here is just to show you that we work in all 50 states. And I was asked recently by a gentleman in Georgia saying, "Oh, I thought it was only in Florida." No, FIRPTA is all over the place, even in Alaska. But here's the neat part about Anna. Anna lives in North Pole, Alaska, and her last name is Claus. So this is Anna Claus. And that's a true story. This is not Frank, but this is something that happened to Frank. He purchased a property in 2020 for $430,000 from a foreign seller from China. And they applied for a withholding certificate, which had them pay less for their withholding. But we don't suggest doing that anymore. And I don't want to get into the whole deal with withholding, but it takes longer since COVID to get approved for a withholding certificate rather than just pay FIRPTA and then file your taxes. That comes back a lot quicker. If you start the withholding process and it's tax time and you could have applied your taxes, then you can't do them because you're waiting for their response. But in any case, these folks from China got a withholding amount of 0. And so a lot of times the IRS doesn't communicate with each other. And that's what happened here. So here's Frank in his new home, and he gets this bill from the IRS for $92,000. And he actually came into our office with this form, and it included the original amount that would have been withheld from FIRPTA, 15% of the selling price of $64,500, plus penalties, plus interest on the penalty. And anyway, here he is in his new house, and he gets a bill for $92,000. Well, he came in to our office, and we have found that the IRS makes a ton of errors like this, and they don't come back and say, "Oh, sorry, Frank, we made an error. You really don't owe this." You have to be proactive when dealing with them and getting something like this, because they won't correct their own errors internally. So we were able to handle all the communication with the IRS and provide the documentation and eventually clear him from the penalties and the interest and the fees. And now Frank is a much happier buyer. This next couple mean a lot to me. This is Matt and Julia, and they're from Canada. And I'm in Pennsylvania right now, and I was down at the office whenever Matt and Julia came in to our office in Florida. and it was in October 2022. And prior to that, Hurricane Ian came through, and their beautiful winter home was just devastated. And so what they decided was because they were an older couple, they decided we're not going to renovate. Let's just sell it like it is, go back to Canada, regroup, and then they loved Florida in the winter, so they decided that they would later purchase. And in fact, they did. They purchased another property that was move-in ready. But because they're foreign and because FIRPTA is based on the selling price, not on the profit, which of course they wouldn't get any, but because it's based on the selling price, they had to pay $25,500 in FIRPTA. Well, Julia was meticulous with her paperwork, but it was nowhere to be found. So they came into our office and we were able to help them get their tax IDs, their passport certification, all their documents together. So eventually they were able to file for a refund after they filed their taxes, and they were able to retrieve the entire amount. And the last story I'd like to tell you is about Sue Chung from Hong Kong. And this is a remarkable story. Sue reached out to us to recover her FIRPTA withholding from the IRS and also from the state of California. And her refund was close to $500,000.
Wow.
And there is a statute of limitations when the seller can apply for their file their taxes and apply for the refund, and that's 3 years. Well, the government already had their money, so Sue Lynn came out to us to file her taxes, but she was 2 months short of the 3-year statute of limitations, which gave us 2 months to get all her paperwork and documentation aligned and find out what she needed, and otherwise the IRS was going to have a mighty big chunk of change thanks to Sue. Well, in any case, here we are scrambling to get this all together within 2 months, and we found out that her ITIN number had expired. And since COVID, sometimes it's been taking up to 90 days to come in. So because some of our people knew who to call at the IRS, believe it or not, we were able to get this whole transaction taken care of. And she was able to file her tax returns with Ricky all prior to the deadline. And that was remarkable. But as you can see, each of these cases that I've been telling you about are totally different. Each person who comes in has a different need. And one of the things that we do is customize our solutions with what they need. So it's tailored for your customer. And this is, I'm going to open it up for questions in a minute, but I want to move on to a different screen before we do. And that is this one. This is the present that I have for you. On our website, and you can take a picture of this screen if you like, not just for the code, but just for some of the other information. If you go to our website, which is FIRPTAsolutions.com, and then there's a tab there called Real Estate Professionals, which is you, and go down to download your FIRPTA ebook. And it's going to look something like this, and the pages turn and so forth. And there's a password, and the password is FS ebook. It's not case sensitive. It's just FS ebook. I just wrote it like this so you'd be able to see it better. But it is not totally down, like you can't print it, but you can go there as often as you want and look up information. And it's set up just like a book. It's really neat. You can turn the pages. It's really neat. But there's another thing that I want to show you that's on here. And I have gotten so many compliments on this little teeny flyer, and it's this one right here. What your foreign sellers and their buyers need to know. And you can print yourself a copy of that one. And it looks something like this. It's so simple, but it gives your seller and buyer a heads up. And this is this one you can download, Christine, and you can print it, like I said. But it just says, you know, you're required to have a tax ID. You may ask for proof of foreign status, of non-foreign status. You may face penalties if these aren't submitted. It just gives them a heads up, because sometimes they come to you and complain about having to do this. But this is from the IRS, so you can give them a little idea of what they may be in store for. And once again, that's right here. It's on the same tab, Real Estate Professionals, what your foreign sellers and their buyers need to know. So I'm going to hop back to this screen. And if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And I lost my chat for some reason.
Yes, well, there are a few questions popping up. I don't know if Angeles wants to start. Go ahead.
Yes,
We can
yes,
go back
thank
to the main
you.
screen.
I appreciate all of the information. That was very helpful. One thing that I'm interested to know, if people come into you and ask you, what can we do to legally not pay FIRPTA? I've heard, of course, that maybe opening or buying the property as an US LLC. Is that something that you can explain, or your tax, maybe for next class? But I'm very curious about that.
Hi, thank you. So I'll answer that. So if your foreigners want to buy a property, especially if it's like a rental property or so, they can buy in an entity name. However, that necessarily does not exclude them to be subject to FIRPTA. The entity has to be in one or more, like 2+ members. That's the only way that you could go around FIRPTA. If the property is listed, or you do a quick claim deed and do the change within a short amount of time, that is a red flag. We do not recommend that, because the IRS can, you know, if they try to audit or, you know, just pick your client's file out of the blue, it can, you know, get you in trouble. But if you have a buyer, a foreign buyer, they're husband and wife, they want to have an entity set up, we can help with that as well, and then they can purchase in the name of an entity. But again, it needs to be 2+ members.
But it has to be well enough in advance. It can't be like at closing.
Yeah, yeah, correct, yeah, correct, yes, yes.
Okay, so just to be sure, the best practice as, you know, a real estate agent when you are representing a buyer is, you know, most likely these foreign national loans close in the person's name. They can close also in an entity name, but let's say it just closes on the person's name. Would you advise that it would be quit claim deed immediately after closing into an LLC with 2 members? Would that be the best way not to raise flags?
Yeah, I mean, I would do it right after the purchase, but if they do it like shortly before you list the property or while it is listed, that is a red flag. Then you cannot do it.
It will raise red flags to the IRS, and the problem is that your seller is a foreigner, and therefore, like Rosalie previously mentioned, they will go after the buyer, and they will. It could take maybe 1, 2, 3 years. I had a client who sold property a year and a half ago, and now the IRS just sent him a letter last week. So, and he's a buyer. So the IRS will pop up if they see any red flags. So yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Got it. Thank you so much. That was clarifying. And also, last question is, see, in the taxes, people have a lot of questions on why is it beneficial to have a mortgage rather than buy cash, because they can deduct all of the interest I would love to have a class, maybe somebody that in your office that could actually explain that very thoroughly so that we can explain, these buyers that want to buy cash, how is beneficial to them to get a mortgage, because they can actually deduct the yearly interest. So that would be something that would be really helpful to us as
Yeah,
well.
that would be a question for our CPA team. But
Yes.
again, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a foreigner or a U.S. citizen owning that property. If they have, I mean, we all want to pay as less, as little taxes as possible. So if you can deduct the mortgage, of course, that is a possibility. But what we do is, when our CPA team does their taxes, we, look what the property was purchased for, what it is selling for, we deduct that. Each seller gets an exemption of $44,625. All the capital improvements that have been done to the property, if they have a mortgage, if they, have interest payments, that is considered. The realtor charges, like some closing costs, our fee.
Our fee as well.
This is all, it's tax deductible. So.
Correct.
And that would be a good question to refer to our CPA team
Yes.
as well,
Definitely,
rather than our FIRPTA team.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer,
You're welcome.
you have a question?
Yes, hi, how are you guys? I was patiently waiting. I have a situation actually. So I was representing the buyer. The seller is a foreigner, and the seller had her attorney do her FIRPTA process and everything else. And of course, we had our title company and everything else as the usual process. Now, it seems that my buyer received a letter from IRS saying that I guess the monies that needed to be sent to them weren't sent to them on a timely manner. It wasn't that it wasn't sent, it just wasn't sent on a timely manner. And when I reached back to the title company, they said that it was the seller's attorney that held the money longer than he should have. So now my buyer is being charged, I guess, interest of over $40,000.
Wow.
So what do you do, or what do you suggest in this case? Because it's outside, and it's hard for me to even say this, because at the end of the day, according to our license, everything is our fault. But it's hard for me to say, okay, how do you prevent that as a realtor, as a real estate professional, where you have a title company handling their part, you have an attorney handling his part, and then these parties don't do what they have to do on those timely manners? How do we prevent this from happening to future clients, and how do I resolve this with my client?
So unfortunately, your client right now, it is in a big problem, because the IRS doesn't care whose fault is it. They only care that they did not get the money on time. And that's why when Rosalie mentioned the 20-day time frame, is very important that they follow it. And also very unfortunate, sometimes title companies or closers, attorneys in this case, sometimes they're not very familiar with the FIRPTA process, and they will make mistakes and they will not send the money on time. And what happens is, you have to post, when you send the money to the IRS, it has to be posted in the time frame of the 20 days. If it's not posted within those days, then the IRS starts running with accruing late fees and also interest charges. So they do both, okay? And I think they do it each week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they do like $10,000, between $5,000 to $10,000. So it's something that is a very time-sensitive situation that you need to jump on it. And unfortunately, these cases, your buyer will have to take the fall for it and pay a company like ours. We can definitely look into it. If you want to send us the information, we can help your client with that. But basically what we have to do in this case, it's a very tedious process though, but I'm just gonna give you a little synopsis of how it works. We will have to contact the IRS on your client's behalf and ask them to abate the penalties, okay? But it's very important that you understand that this does not tell you that it will happen, because
Right.
it is to the IRS discretion if they want to accept it or not. Also, it is not a quick fix. Like I was saying previously, I had a client who closed, well, actually, he wasn't my client, he was a buyer. But he had called me to ask me what was going on with FIRPTA, you know, and how he was going to be held liable. The people that prepared the paperwork, it wasn't us, but they were somebody who had reached out and they asked counsel from us, which I thought, you know, it was good. But what happened is down the line, a year later, the client receives a letter that they owe money, just because the IRS thinks that instead of, they withheld 10%. The IRS thought that why they withheld 10% instead of 15. So now this client has a bill of $45,000. And the IRS is basically sending weekly letters saying, if you don't pay this, then we're going to put a lien on your property. We're going to do this and that. So right now, to this buyer, unfortunately, he had to pay us $3,500 in order to try to fix this. And it's been already like, I don't know, like five months probably that we've been working on this process, because it's not an easy thing to do. We have to send one of our hard case resolutions team members. We have to send them to the IRS, do appointments with them, be on the phone with them. It's a lot of work. But unfortunately, I would recommend that we act fast on that if you would like our assistance.
And for future cases, you're welcome. And for future cases, that just you as a buyer's agent, if you know that your buyer is buying a property from a foreign person, look at the settlement statement, not just your commission. I know that is very important for us realtors. That's the 10 or 15% are withheld. And then you also have to, I would just be straightforward, call the title company and say, hey, has this money been sent out?
Show me proof.
Yeah, show me proof. What we call it proof of remitted funds. When we have a case, we prepare those forms. The forms are sent with instructions to the title company. 1 or 2 days after closing, we call the title company. We want confirmation it has been sent by phone, and then we send them an email requesting the proof of remitted funds. That is, the document. It is the FedEx label or mailing label that was sent to the IRS, the check, a copy of the check that has been sent to the IRS, and the signed forms, the 8288 forms that were signed by the buyer. And that is the proof that the title company has to keep in their files, that we real estate agents have to keep on file, and we at FIRPTA Solutions, we keep that in our files too, in case something happens, because it's for all parties, for the sellers, for the buyers, but you as the realtor have to check with the title company. I mean, it's just a phone call, say, hey, you know, has it been sent in? And that has to happen within the 20 days.
Even better an email, even better an email, because you know, as you're saying, title companies are responsible. Which, you know, I know that we have a couple more questions, and I want to be quick with this. How is it possible that the seller's attorney withhold funds when the title company is the one that's managing the funds? That doesn't make any sense to me, because it's the title company's responsibility to have all funds from the transaction and disperse accordingly. So this is not making any sense.
That was the answer I got from the title company, that it was the attorney that held it back. So at this point, I mean, I have all the emails and correspondings, me questioning everything, because at this point, I need the title company to step up and help my client as well, because I'm trying to find solutions for him, because it's not right for him to be penalized.
You should contact, you know, directly to FIRPTA Solutions, because, you know, the buyer might be able in a position to, you know, to sue the title company or the seller's attorney, because it's not, you know, the title's company responsibility to be able to disperse the funds. So I know that we have other questions.
Thank you, guys.
They have been
helpful.
waiting patiently. Cesar? And Cesar, if you're still here, if you want to
Yes,
proceed
yes.
with
Hey,
with
how
your
are you guys?
question.
How you doing? Yes, I have a question.
Somebody just asked for this screen up again.
Yes, that's okay. We have the screen there, but go
Thank you.
ahead, Cesar.
Yes. Hey, how are you? My case, I represent the seller. Of course, he was using his CPA. He was using the title company, everything. Okay. The money was sent to the IRS and everything, but he is not happy with the way that this thing is being handled by his CPA. Apparently, the person doesn't have the time, doesn't answer. You know how it is. So, is it possible for you two guys that I refer the seller to you?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll
of
take over. So the forms have been done. He just wants to get his withholding amount back, right? Like we could do his tax returns.
Yeah, we can do
Yes.
that. We can do
Yes.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. you
Doesn't
wanna-
matter in which part the transaction is, we can take over and assist the client.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
something that I like, sorry.
No. Go ahead, please.
Something that I like to communicate to you guys is that it's very important that you understand that not every CPA is experienced with FIRPTA, okay? Because a lot of times the clients have been doing their taxes and their accounting businesses with the CPAs, but even the CPAs, some CPAs who I think they're great, they would even say, look, I'm not, I don't know what's going on with FIRPTA. I've never done it before. Go with somebody that knows what they're doing. And we do FIRPTA every single day, all year long, okay?
That's the only thing we do.
Exactly. So we know what we're talking about. I can promise you that. And a lot of times it happens that the CPAs will be like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. We'll take care of FIRPTA. We'll do this and that. And then sometimes they end up putting their clients and also the buyer in a situation that could have been prevented when they should have just gone with somebody who knows what they're doing. Because you're not going to go to the veterinary to get your molars out, right? You're going to go to the dentist. So sometimes, the clients will tell you, oh, no, my CPA is going to take care of it. And then it ends up being a situation that could have been prevented to go with somebody that knows FIRPTA in and out. And it's like Rosalie said, this piece of the time of the tax code is very complex. Not every situation is the same. And it's very important that you reach out to somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're talking about.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Martha or Gina, if you guys are still here in the chat. Gina?
I'm Gina, yeah. So as a title company perspective, I can attest to that, where I even get phone calls from the CPAs or accountants asking me what forms they need to do in that situation. And I always call back the seller or the agent and say, listen, be careful, because yes, he's a CPA, but he doesn't know, and he's not experienced on this. So I can attest to that. And my question was more back to the quitclaim deed. So we get asked all the time to prepare quitclaim deeds from a foreigner to their LLCs with 2 members. And when we do them, we even make them sign documents that says that, it's like we're not doing that to avoid the retention of the IRS because they're foreigners. But is there like a time? I know you guys mentioned like a proper time or not do it, so quickly, but is there like a time frame where the IRS will consider a red flag, like 6 months, a year, 3 months, or no?
Not really.
Yeah, not really, but as I said, not when the property is listed or shortly before it's listed,
Exactly,
So
yes.
I would at least give it a year,
Yeah.
just to be on the safe side.
Just because you don't want the IRS to think that you're trying to avoid paying taxes,
Of
because
course, right. And
ultimately
that's
that's what they will
always
think.
explain. Right. And another thing that this makes me think is, you know, it's unfair for a buyer that is buying a property not to know about this. So maybe when I get a file and I see a recent quitclaim deed, maybe I should bring it out to the buyer to be aware, because at the end of the day, if I see a recent quitclaim deed, as I said, title underwriters, they don't take responsibility of this. So they will be like, this is up to the buyers. So maybe for my future transactions after your class, maybe I should, you know, at least make the buyer aware that there was a recent quitclaim deed done from a foreigner to an LLC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because if the seller owes any taxes, you know, they have their money, and most of the time, like Rosalie said on the presentation, they're going back to their countries. How is the IRS going to get them to pay their taxes? There's no way. So the next best thing is to reach out to whoever bought the property, and if they're a U.S. citizen, they get that beautiful letter.
And
so
and with the market how it has been lately, with the, I mean, some properties have doubled in prices within the, like, since the pandemic. There is quite a few properties that have made capital gains, and there is capital gains tax due, and we want to make sure that we you know.
And we also care for the buyers. Like I always say, we work, our job mainly is to work with the sellers, but I love it when the buyers call us, and I shoot it straight. I tell them, look, if the seller doesn't do this, this, and this, if you're not part of the process, if you don't acknowledge that you are part of the process by signing the forms, then this could backfire on you. So we tell them exactly how it is, and I know sometimes the sellers might think, oh, look, you know, they're working against us. No, we're not. We just want to make sure that everybody is doing what they need to do and that nobody gets hurt in the process, because we don't want that. We don't want, you know, citizens, and we don't want foreigners to, accrue any situation with the IRS. So.
Yeah, so we also have a lot of cases. Yes, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to also, on the last comment from the agent that the seller's attorney was the one that was going to send the retention to the IRS. I also want to comment that this is important when realtors get a file that is involved with FIRPTA to ask their title company, because I get files often where they get switched to me because the title company does not want to act as the retention agent for the money. So I don't know how legal is that, but some title companies, they don't want to be involved in the process. They don't want to be liable of sending money to the IRS, so they reject it. So maybe this was one of those cases, and the seller's attorney had to take over to close the transaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's like implement the tax code. If they hear FIRPTA, they're scared, and we know of title companies that they don't want to even like touch it. We know of title companies that held 15% no matter what. They say, I don't care, like it needs to be 15%, or you can change the title company. Because again, I mean, they have seen things and they want to be on the safe side. So you as the title agent or the title company has to decide from themselves. So if you do not want to send the check to the IRS yourself, we can do that too. So we can send you the forms with instructions, the buyer signs it, you send us the check that is issued to the IRS to our office. We will remit those funds to the IRS. I mean, obviously you have to send it in right next day, like overnight it to us once it is signed. In some cases, we can have the buyer sign it.
If the buyer has any questions.
We work with both sides, so we explain it to them, even though like there's an affidavit involved when we have buyers calling and then asking what that affidavit even is, or you know,
we're more than happy to talk to the buyers. So we just have your buyers call us. There's no problem. We can talk to them. We explain to them in and out what they need to do, what their responsibility is in this case, because we, of course, want the buyer to be on board with the situation.
Exactly.
So we want everybody to know, and sometimes it happens, and it happens a lot more than you think. The buyer doesn't know that the seller is a foreigner until the day of closing. And I feel like sometimes that is a little like misinformation from either the title company or whoever is doing the closing, that they don't disclose that, right there and then. So, yeah.
And even if they do, a lot of times they have no clue what FIRPTA is or why it makes any difference if they're foreign or not. So
Correct.
I mean, it's not legal, but it's ethical. It's an ethical thing to do. So
Correct, yeah.
We've seen it all, so we can literally seen it all.
That is an understatement, but yes, we have seen it all.
Yeah, every day we have different cases, and every case is different. We have rarely a file where it's like,
Easy.
Yesterday we had two
question.
title companies.
I have one more question before we go, which I'm sure that this is in the minds of a lot of people had to leave because we cut this out at 11. But what's the fee? That's the regular fee. You would just like have a normal case and you will just prepare the forms and submit and all that and so forth. Is like a specific fees or set fees that you guys have?
Yes, we do have set fees. So the remit forms are $650. That's the first seller. Any additional seller on the deed is $100.
Correct.
And then if we have to apply or renew an ITIN number, which we can do with, in the same process, is $250 per person. And then when we file their, for the ITIN.
Correct.
And then we can also file their taxes. That is $450. If they have any rental properties, yes. If they have any rental properties or like rental income or another sale in the same year, it's another 50, I think.
Another 50. Sorry,
Yeah. And then also good for you to know is that can be on the settlement segment.
Okay.
And what was that again?
I'm sorry. It's customized to what their need is. So sometimes it's hard
Correct.
to just give a basic.
And then
but basically if it's a regular, if it's a standard deal with, you get the form. Is it the forms 80, 82, 88, A and B? Both forms?
Yes. So it's the form 82, 88, A, B, and C that will be prepared for each seller. And then we'll take the lead, we'll collect all the information, send the forms. We have an automated program where we onboard we have an onboarding team, and then we have the processors, and it goes to the CPA teams once like the ITINs have been applied for.
And then once this has been done, then the CPA will file the taxes so they can claim back whatever they're entitled to.
Correct. Yeah. So, and we will be in touch throughout the entire process. Again, it's a lengthy process, more than a year.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be touching with the client and in their own mother tongue, because we speak so many languages.
Oh, yeah.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, for having the time to meet with us. We're looking forward to working with you, sending our agents. We'll be able to share this presentation with you guys as soon as it downloads from the cloud. And I'm sure that we will be in touch again. Sigdem, thank you so much for contacting me and presenting this to the club. We'll look forward to another class in the future. Thank you so
Absolutely,
much.
we'd love to.
It was a
And
pleasure.
please, if you have any questions, call us, email us. If you have a transaction where you don't know if that is a legit person, send a copy of the passport. We have CAs in here that can verify their identities. We can do Zoom calls, we can help you with that as well. Do not hesitate. So
Thank you so much.
We are here
Have
for
a
you guys.
wonderful day. Look forward
You
to
guys.
seeing you again.
Bye, guys.
Nice to see you guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank
Bye-bye.
you, bye.
Bye.